Good morning, students. We're going to start with the first chapter of Flamingo book, that is the last lesson. I started for school very late that morning and was in great dread of a scolding, especially because M. Hamill had said that he would question us on participles, and I did not know the first word about them. For a moment, I thought of running away and spending the day out of doors. It was so warm and so bright. The birds were chirping at the edge of woods, and in the open field, back of sawmill of the Prussian soldiers were drilling. It was all much more tempting than the rule of participles, but I had the strength to resist and hurried off to school. When I passed the town hall, there was a crowd in front of the bulletin board. For the last 2 years, all our bad news had come from there. The lost battles, the draft, the orders of the commanding officer, and I thought to myself without stopping, what can be the matter now? So Franz is getting very late that morning for the school, and he is very scared that because his teacher M. Hamill is going to question him regarding the participles of the French grammar. So poor Franz did not know even a single word about them, and he was afraid of getting a scolded from his teacher. It was a bright sunny day, and for a moment Franz thought of running away and spending the day outside. He thought that it would be much better to stay outside rather than sitting inside the classroom and listening to the rules of participles. The chirping of birds, the marching of the Prussian soldiers was much more tempting than the rules of participles. However, Franz was able to fight the temptation and he hurried off to the school. On his way to school, Franz passes down the town hall and notices a crowd in the front of the bulletin board. So, at the time of the Franco-Prussian War, the media was really not advanced at that time. So, only the source of, getting the resources or getting the information was through the bulletin board. So for the past 2 years, that bulletin board had brought them all the bad news that had come from the entire Prussian area. So little Franz thought that what could be the matter this time. As he was hurrying past, Watcher the blacksmith called out of him and said that there was a plenty of time to reach to the school, so he should not really run so fast. Franz thought that he was making fun of him, and he reached the school panting. Panting is like, half pahunchna. Then I was hurried by as fast as I could. The blacksmith, Watcher, who was there with his apprentice is the trainee, reading the bulletin, called after me, "Don't go so fast, Bob. You'll get to your school in plenty of time." So he thought that this little Watcher is actually making, a fun of him. Maybe because he was really running to the school fastly. So he's just trying to make fun of him. I thought he was making fun of me and reached M. Hamill's little garden out of breath. Usually, when school began, there was a great bustle which could be heard in the street. The opening and the closing of desks, lessons repeated in unison, very loud, and our hands over our ears to understand better, and the teacher's great ruler rapping on the table. But now it was all so still. I'd counted on the commotion to get my desk without being seen, but of course that day everything had to be as quiet as Sunday morning. So you all know that how school is early in the morning. There's like great hustle and bustle inside the school area. So exactly the same. He was expecting that particular day also, but to his surprise, it turned out to be very different that day. It turned out to be like a Sunday morning, like when everything is very quiet and still. But he was just trying to get to his seat. He was expecting that everybody would be like singing into the choir, probably into the unisons. The lessons are being read. There is like a lot of noise inside the school area, but everything was quiet and still. So he just wanted that nobody should see him. So he just tried to grab his seat where he usually used to sit. So now he's like sitting there and looking around. Through the window, I saw my classmates already in their places and M. Hamill walking up and down with his terrible iron ruler under his arm. I had to open the door and go in before everybody. You can imagine how I blushed and how frightened I was. He was thinking that probably everybody would be like talking. There'll be like lessons already going around because he was already late for the class. But to his surprise, nothing really happened that ways. Everything turned out to be very different that day. So he was very blushed, he was really frightened that probably, M. Hamill would scold him. He was just expecting to get the scolding that day. But he was like blushing, he was really scared, but then simply sat inside the classroom. But nothing happened. M. Hamill saw me and said very kind, "Go to your place quickly, little Franz. We were beginning without you." I jumped over the bench and sat down at my desk. Not till then, when I had got a little over my fright, did I see that our teacher had on his beautiful green coat, his frilled shirt, and the little black silk cap all embroidered, that he never wore except on inspection and the prize days. Beside, the whole school seemed so strange and solemn. So he was when he actually sat on his seat, he jumped over the bench and sat down quickly, but not till then. He was just trying to get over his fright. He was getting onto his senses, and he sees that the teacher was wearing a beautiful green coat, his frilled shirt, which he never expected him to wear on the normal school days, and the little black silk cap all embroidered, that he had never wore except on inspection and prize days. So this kind of dressing was expected on the special days, but not on the normal school days. So he was looking very strange and solemn. Solemn is like serious. He was looking very serious. But the thing that surprised me most was to see on the back benches that were always empty, the village people sitting quietly like ourselves. Old Hauser, with his three-cornered hat, the former mayor, the former postmaster, and the several other besides. So he was not expecting the old ex-students to really sit inside the classroom, and that too they were too old. Especially the people like former mayor, former postmaster, and all these old people were sitting at the last seats out there, and everybody was very quietly sitting. So he was into a very strange kind of an environment. He felt that why is it like that? Why everybody is like today sitting inside the classroom, and why Mr. M. Hamill is behaving so strangely. Everybody looked sad, and Hauser had bought an old primer. Old primer is basically a kind of a book, the basic book in a basic book of any kind of a language. So everybody looked sad, and Hauser had bought an old primer, thumbed at the edges, and he held it open on his knees with his great spectacles lying across the pages. So he was holding that book, and it looked like that they had come for the lessons that day. While I was wondering about it all, M. Hamill mounted his chair, and in the same grave and gentle tone which he had used to me, said, "My children, this is the last lesson I shall give you. The order has come from Berlin to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. The new master comes tomorrow. This is your last French lesson. I want you to be very attentive." So now basically this paragraph explains you what was really going inside that classroom that particular day. So into the same kind of tone that Mr. M. Hamill had used for France beforehand, it was the same tone, and he said that in a very gentle tone. He said that, "My children, this is going to be the last lesson of your French lessons, because the order has come from Berlin that only German would be taught in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. So now French is no longer your language. So I want you all to be very attentive, because this is your last lesson." What a thunderclap these words to me. Oh, the wretches. That was what they had put up the town hall. So now, why thunderclap? Because, it actually sounded like, my goodness, what has really happened? Something has really taken away from us. Just imagine the time, just imagine the place, where you have been like studying from past 40 years, or probably you have been teaching that particular language for past 40 years, and suddenly the news had come that yes, now French would no longer be your official language, or probably your mother tongue. You'll have to just boycott that language, and now you'll have to learn the language known as German. So it was like very, very typical kind of a thing for everybody to really digest on. But still, so now he remembered that why there was a big crowd over the bulletin board. So because this was the news that was put onto the bulletin board. My last French lesson? Why, I hardly knew how to write. I shall never learn anymore. I must stop there then. How? Oh, how sorry I was, not for learning my lessons, for seeking birds' eggs, or going sliding on the Saar. My books that had seemed such a nuisance a while ago so heavy to carry. My grammar and my history of the saints were old friends now that I couldn't give up. And M. Hamill, too, the idea that he was going away, that I should never see him again, made me forget all about his rule and how cranky he was. All of a sudden, when somebody tells you, fine, okay, Hindi is no longer your official language, you are turning into some other particular language. So imagine how would you really feel. So the language which you have been speaking like for many years, ages, and suddenly you've been asked to just get rid of that language. It was like very strange and very surprising for little Franz to really digest on. Now what he says, why should I give up my old friends? Because why old friends is he saying? The reason being, calling his books as old friends is like, your old friends are your habit. You don't really want to get over them. So exactly, it was more of a habit, though he has not learned anything properly in his French lessons because he never paid any kind of attention. But still, he never wanted to get rid of all these particular books. So now, poor man, it was in honor of his last lesson that he had put on his fine Sunday clothes, and now I understood why the old men of the village were sitting there in the back of the room. It was because they were so sorry that they had not gone to school anymore. It was their way of thanking our masters for his 40 years of faithful service and of showing their respect for the country that was theirs no more. So now he understood, and now he understood why Mr. M. Hamill was wearing so nice clothes, because it was actually a very special day. A special day as in, because that was the last day when he was actually rendering his services, and why these all poor people were sitting beside were the main reason, because it was the last lesson of French, and they too had never paid any attention. So they really wanted, it looked like, they really wanted to grab everything in French they could actually get a chance for. So they were also feeling very sorry. The entire class was feeling very sorry, because they were really never interested in listening to all the French lessons that had been taught so far. He was always interested in looking outside the window. He was already interested in sliding, looking onto the bird's egg. So now they were feeling sorry that yes, something very special, which is like very close to their heart, is like going away from them. While I was thinking about of all this, I heard my name called. It was my turn to recite. What would I not have given to be able to say that dreadful rule for the participle all through, very loud and clear and without any mistake. But I got mixed up on the first words and stood there, holding onto my desk, my heart beating and not daring to look up. So now it was his name was being called up. Now it was his turn to recite the rules for the participles. But he was never prepared for it, so he never had paid any attention to it. So now he just wanted to get very loud and clear, but without making any kind of mistake. He wanted to, but he was sure that he would not be able to speak any word, because he had never ever understood even a single word of French participles. I heard M. Hamill say to me, I won't scold you, little Franz, you must feel bad enough. See how it is. Every day we have said to ourselves, bah, I have plenty of time, I'll learn it tomorrow. And now you see where you have come out. That is a great trouble with Elsa. She puts off learning till tomorrow. So now he was expecting a good scolding, but he did not scold that day. Mr. M. Hamill, because he was feeling sorry too. He was saying that it's really bad with you all people, the entire community of Alsace and Lorraine, because everything you people put on to tomorrow, that yes, we'll do it tomorrow, we've got like ample of time, we'll study French, we'll have like ample of time, we'll do whatever things, whatever are being asked us to do it today, we'll do it tomorrow. So he was not scolding, but he was just kind of sarcastically saying that, yeah, see you said that you have got like plenty of time, you'll learn it, you'll do it, but see how you have landed up to, you don't know anything. Now these fellows out there will have the right to say to you, how is it you pretend to be Frenchmen and yet you can neither speak nor write your own language? But you are not the worst, poor little France. We all have a great deal to reapproach ourselves with. So it is not only you. See, now he's saying that. So now you have given a reason to all the German people. When they'll come to your country, they'll say that, see, we have actually, come down to a right thing, because this is how you pretend to be Frenchmen, but you can neither speak nor you can write in French. So it is good that we should actually take you over. But but you're not the worst, poor little France. We have all a great deal to reapproach ourselves. We all are there to blame ourselves. Reapproach is like we are actually blaming our own selves. We should blame our own selves, because it's not only you, it's everybody, each one of us, to be blamed that we really did not pay any more attention towards learning the beautiful language as French. Your parents were not anxious enough to have you learn. They preferred to put you to work on a farm or at the mills, so as to have a little money, more money. And I have to I have been to blame also. Have I not often sent you to water my flowers instead of learning your lessons? And when I wanted to go fishing, did I not just give you a holiday? So he's saying that it is not only you to be blamed, it is actually me too, because me too, and your family as well. Why? Because your family wanted you to work on farms so that they could actually earn a little bit more of money. And even me, because at times whenever I wanted to go for fishing, I used to give you a holiday. Probably at times even I told you, instead of learning your lessons inside the classrooms, I told you to go out and water the plants. Then from one thing to another, M. Hamel went on to talk of the French language, saying that it was the most beautiful language in the world, the clearest, the most logical, that we must guard it among us and never forget it. So because this poor little man, France, he was also worried, and on top of everything, M. Hamel was more worried, because he was, he wanted to teach everything on that day. He was so helpless, he was so restless, and he felt like, probably, everybody would have paid attention, and this thing would have never been happened, because getting to your own language, getting to your own roots is like the most important thing. When you're not attached to your roots, definitely anybody from outside can come and invade you. So he went on and on and on and on, and he was like non-stoppable, and he was like saying that French is one of the most beautiful, the most clearest, and the most logical language, and we must guard it among us and never forget it, because when a people are enslaved, as long as they hold fast to their language, it is as if they had the key to their prison. So definitely, if you lose your language, your prison is very, very near. So once you get away from your roots, basically, it is very easy for other people from outside to come and invade you. Then he opened a grammar and read us our lesson. I was amazed to see how well I understood it. All he said seemed so easy, I think too, that I had never listened so carefully. So now that was the last lesson. So after questioning each and everybody out there, he opened up the book and he started reading out the lesson in the grammar. So Franz was able to grab each and every word so nicely, because he thought, and at that time he thought that French is so easy that I never paid attention. Probably if I would have paid attention with all my interest, definitely I would have easily understood each and every lesson of it. So now he actually thought that I had never listened so carefully, and that he had never explained everything with so much patience. And on the other way, Mr. M. Hamel must have never explained the lesson so patiently. It seemed almost as if the poor man wanted to give us all he knew before going away, and to put it all to our heads at one stroke. So at one go, he wanted that, everybody should understand each and every concept of French lesson. After the grammar, we had a lesson in writing. That day, M. Hamel had a new copies for us, written in beautiful round hand, France, Alsace, France, Alsace. They looked like little flags floating everywhere in the schoolroom, hung from the rod at the top of our desk. So after giving the lesson, so they had a writing lesson. So he had given them the copies, the copies, the paper kind of a thing, in which it was bordered, bordered with the word France, Alsace. So it was like covered with small little flag. They looked like little flags floating everywhere in the schoolroom, hung from the rod at the top of our desk. You ought to have seen how everyone set to work, and how quiet it was. The only sound was the scratching of the pens over the paper. Once some beetles flew in, but nobody paid any attention to them, not even the littlest ones. So now Everybody was so quiet. Everybody was in such a shock that, they were really not ready to accept that really French is going away from them. Now they'll be like enslaved, and they'll be like enslaved of the new language and the new people, Germans. So now, he really wanted to look onto that beetle that really flew in, but nobody means nobody, not even the littlest ones, even paid attention to the beetles that flew in. So everybody was only and only focused of learning the French, who worked right on the tracing their fish hooks, as it was the French too. On the roof, the pigeon cooed very low, and I thought to myself, will they make them sing in German, even the pigeons? So they had the fear, especially he's talking about himself right now, and he said that, I was thinking, is it going to be like they'll make these the birds also, I mean, sing into the same language, that the language we are going to speak into. So now he was really worried, and he was worried into a very dreadful situation. Whenever I looked up from my writing, I saw M. Hamel sitting motionless in his chair and gazing first at one thing, then to another, and as if he wanted to fix in his mind just how everything looked in that little schoolroom. Fancy, for 40 years he had been there into the same place, with his garden outside the window and his class in front of him. Just like that, only the desks and benches have been worn and smooth. The walnut trees in the garden were taller, and the hop vine that he had planted himself twined about the windows to the roof. How it must have broken his heart to leave it all, poor man, to hear his sister moving about the room above, packing their trunks, for they must leave the country next day. So Mr. M. Hamill's situation is like very dreadful at this time. He's actually looking in to each and everything in that particular classroom very nicely, very keenly. He was just paying attention to each and every walnut tree, to every hope vine, to the garden, to the chairs, to the classroom, everything that was hung inside. He wanted to capture the image of the entire classroom into his memory. He never wanted to lose any kind of thing. So he said that, and on top of everything, there was a kind of, trunk dragging sound, because the sister of M. Hamel was packing away their trunks, because he was expected to leave the country the very next day. But he had the courage to hear every lesson to very last. After the writing, we had a lesson in history, and then the babies chanted their Baba, Bibi, Boo Boo. Down there at the back of the room, old Hauser had put on his spectacles and, holding his primer in both hands, spelled the letters with them. You could see that he too was crying. His voice trembled with emotion, and it was so funny to hear him that we all wanted to laugh and cry. Now, well, I remember it, the last lesson. So everybody, the entire class was saying into the unison. They really wanted to, go on to what exactly the readings were saying. So they wanted to really read out in a particular way. So all that, once the church clock struck 12, then the Angelus. What is the Angelus? Angelus is a prayer song in the church. Okay. At the same moment, the trumpets of the Prussians returning from the drill sounded under our windows. M. Hamel stood up very pale in his chair. I never saw him look so tall. My friend said, but something choked him that he could not go on. Then he turned to the blackboard, took a piece of chalk, and bearing on with all his might, he wrote as large as he could, Vive la France. Vive la France means long live France. Then he stopped and leaned his head against the wall, and without a word he made a gesture to us with his hand. School is dismissed, like this. School is dismissed. You may go. So he had all the emotions. He had that kind of choking sound because he wanted to say something, and his tears were stopping him to say. He never wanted to really dismiss the class. He never wanted to leave the class, but he had no other option. So with the clock striking 12, he said the school is dismissed. Now you all can go. And with all his hands, he could write on the board that was Vive la France, that is long live France. So this is your first chapter's explanation. Rest homework I'll be putting onto the app. You can just go through it.